Hello, good evening. And I am talking some more about Brene Brown's work on men, women, and worthiness, the experience in shame, and the power of being enough. I want to talk about my personal INTJ experience with empathy and sympathy and how I'm currently navigating that. So to start with, Brene Brown has a little bit of a simplified definition of the difference between empathy and sympathy, where empathy is where you see someone going through a situation and you say, I've gone through that too. Let me sit with you in this and go through this with you. Like I feel similar or the same emotions that you have gone through. While sympathy is more like, I have never gone through that. You poor thing. And one of the things that her work has suggested is that when you show sympathy to someone going through a hard time, it might induce shame because it makes them feel that they are exaggerating things, they're overblowing things, that this is not something as significant. Otherwise, it would be a shared experience. When I go through my history and my memory, I just never seem to have empathy or, to an extent, sympathy. I remember a situation that was like my crystal moment where I had a family member who had a fever. She fainted and everyone at home was just going crazy. They were panicking, like they just were really emotionally upset. And I remember going into my brain and having read a previous book somewhere about fainting and what you need to do. And so I go over there and I check her pulse, I check her airways, I check that upchuck is not obstructing her, clear her mouth of upchuck, make sure she has free airway, things like that. And I remember a cousin just looking at me, a much older cousin, I kind of call her an aunt, and looking at me and said, wow, you have no feelings. And I always remember that. And I think that was where it dawned on me that my experience of people's negative experiences was different than what was typical for women in my environment. And after a while, I gave up on trying to build empathy because it just didn't come naturally to me. It didn't feel that it was real and that my expression of it did not fit into the mold that it was required to. I realize now that a lot of it is that my feelings do not reside in my chest. That is the best definition I've ever had. My feelings reside in my brain. The second thing that I found that was very helpful with Brene Brown's work and also my personal journey is the idea that I should not look away or run when people go through negative emotions. You see, there is this theory about shared pain, the idea that all humans are one, connected in some way, and so that the origin of empathy and sympathy is that, for example, if someone loses a child, you in a small way lose your own child, and then you feel that ache and you say, oh my gosh, that is hurtful, that is hard, that is devastating. And with those emotions, you take care of your neighbor who has actually lost the child. However, the discomfort of sitting in the pain of losing a child or having a loss gives you the temptation to say, these feelings are optional. Being sympathetic or empathetic is optional, and therefore I can run away. Or I can look away. It's disturbing. I can try and fix it. I can try and make this thing go away. And that is not the solution to empathy. So I'll give you 2 barriers to empathy, and I'll give you 2 solutions, 2 help you grow your empathy muscle just a little bit as a T thinker. The first barrier to empathy is that you want to make things better. And let's be honest, a lot of T thinkers are really, really good fixers. We come up with solutions, we're practical, especially the STs, fantastic, very practical, come up with solutions, things go away. But to an extent, you can't make things better. And it breeds on the sympathy part where it encourages the person that you are trying to serve to think or to feel that what they are going through needs to be tamped down and it should not be brought back up again. The second barrier to empathy is being afraid of saying the wrong things. And this one I always find, because I felt that because I didn't feel as much, I would say things that were hurtful or caustic or just inappropriate for the time. But that's the second thing to accept, is that there isn't anything that you can say that will make it better. So in a sense, you can't ever say the right things. It doesn't work that way. So the solutions I found, I said two, but I'm actually going to add third. The first one would be, there is no magic formula. There is no solution. So stop trying to find a solution and end to the person's pain. Just give up the pursuit. And once you do, then you can actually embark on the process of empathy. The second thing is to what I call sit shiva. But what it means is that you sit in someone's mourning. You don't try to make them feel better. You just say that I care about you and I want to be present with you in this hurt. And that moves a lot of mountains in just having someone process their pain. The third thing we need to do is to experience the situation as the emotion and not the actual experience. And I have an example of this where I had a good friend who went to a grief care because her very aged grandfather had died. She was devastated, but he lived a full life. Things were good in a sense. And she goes to grief care where people have seemingly worse stories than she does. Losing spouses in childbirth, losing children, things that seems more devastating than losing a beloved and aged grandparent. And what she said was she found it difficult to be in the room with them because she felt that she was undeserving of being in the room. They have bigger problems. Why is she blowing this up? One thing that we can do is to connect with the feeling of devastation, the feeling of being alone, the feeling of loss. When we connect with the emotions rather than, oh, I've never lost a child, so I can't help you. That's when you move from sympathy to empathy. When you say, instead of the, oh, I've never lost a spouse to childbirth, into saying, I have the pain of loss and feeling like they're still there when they're not. That's when you're in empathy, and that's when you can sit with the person and not try to move them forward, move them on a timeline of grief processing, but rather just being with them and sitting with them. And I tell you, as a recipient of such kind of empathy, it makes all the difference. And I hope you've enjoyed this